When you think about the word French, or more specifically French education, what are some of the first ideas that come to your mind? This could be authors, foods, places, etc. Now, I'm going to guess most of you thought about Paris, about croissants, about authors like Molière or Victor Hugo. And while these are some very iconic representations of France, I'd like to remind you guys that there are more Francophone speakers outside of the country of France itself. So why don't we consider Montreal? Why don't we think of couscous, of beignets, or of Toussaint Louverture? These are all images from a larger global Francophone world that many of us do engage with on a daily basis. Just for a show of hands here, who here has taken a French class? Either when you were a kid, when you were in high school, or even here at Kalamazoo College? Okay, now I'm going to ask the question you probably get a lot of, why did you choose French? I'm sure that many of you thought about this glamorous Parisian image that we described in the first part, or maybe you have friends or family who speak French, which is common in Michigan as we are so close to the Canadian border. If you're a student at Kalamazoo College, you may have thought about study abroad or a foreign language requirement as a reason to take French. My proposal is to rethink the ways that we learn language at Kalamazoo College and language education in general to be more focused on a diverse, place-based approach. These terms are almost interconnected as we think about our local Francophone population as more diverse than a standardized white European experience. Language education at K should be considered in the lens of what languages are we learning, where, and why. The goal of language education should not be to produce a certain skill set that students can use later on in their careers, because language is inherently intimate. It engages with identity and culture. Taking the experiential aspect out of language education removes the most important part of it. Speaking another language means living a different reality and engaging with cultures that are different from our own. While this project focuses on language education within a French context at Kalamazoo College, it can be understood as a larger framework for language education across the world. So to understand French's presence at Kalamazoo College, we first have to understand the colonial history of Kalamazoo College. Kalamazoo College was founded in 1833 by white settlers as a ministry school. This land belongs to the Potawatomi, indigenous tribe that are from the Great Lakes region. Kalamazoo College has witnessed the dispossession of this land as it was witness to the breaking of treaties and the removal of the Potawatomi people. Today, it continues to see these histories and not take action. While K has never had direct ties to Europe, there has always been an imagined link. We can see this through our language programs. Languages such as French, Spanish, Latin, and Greek have always been offered at Kalamazoo College. We even have a classics department, which focuses on Greco-Roman history as a baseline for careers such as secondary education and healthcare. K College is a colonial institution that is built on stolen land, with a mission to bring European ideals to the space it was occupying. Today, to understand French's presence at Kalamazoo College, we must question who it is being taught to and why. The city of Kalamazoo does have a Francophone population, and Michigan in general. However, this population looks different from what the Kalamazoo College French department presents French. Many of our Francophone speakers in Michigan are immigrants from Western and Southern Africa. However, there's only one class in the Kalamazoo College French major track that focuses on African perspectives within French education. The rest of the classes focus on a white European standard or a white American experience. I would like you guys to consider the dialogue between the curriculum and the populations in Michigan. This shows the disconnect between standardization and standard education and the lived experience of many Michiganders. When we think of language learning and we think of how we learn language as kids, it is not through standard education. We are not sat down with a book with all the rules of grammar and told to memorize them. We learn our language by who we are surrounded by and our immediate community. When we think about language education, I argue that it should be thought in the same lens. We should learn language based off the community that we are surrounded by and form identities that are natural to our own surroundings. While students at Kalamazoo College may go on study abroad and interact with a European French, it is different from their own lives, so they must understand the connection they have with their own French education. The importance of diversifying French education is considered in context of French today. So language is not neutral. It is not something we just learn and acquire. It is so attached to our identity that we must understand the context in which it participates. Race-blind republicanism is the erasure of race and racial terms within social and political spheres in France. The term race is seen as taboo since it reminds many citizens of Nazi occupation, where race was seen as a divider between people. In an effort to avoid this division, the French government has glossed over policies that involve words surrounding race or racial difference. However, racist behavior continues in France today. Some examples we can see are through racist jokes, such as putting on a costume or mimicking someone's accent, or actions or assumptions that are made for someone based off how they look. And when people are treated differently, regardless of their nationality, but because of their appearance, these are all examples of racial difference within France, even without words to label it. Ultimately, race-blind republicanism makes it harder to address issues of race because there is no language or discussion around it. To understand language education at K, we must understand the methodology and the practices behind decisions made about language. So language policies are the rules, laws, practices, and ways to make change within a specific society and group. Language planning is the development, implementation, and evaluation of these policies. Some examples we can see of language planning are cultural activities, education, and media. Ultimately, language planning decides the decisions made about a language, such as official languages, political languages, or what language is used in the classroom. Deciding the norms and labeling things as correct add complexity to language planning, and I'm sure you can see how this directly influences educational spaces. Students are graded on how proficient or correct they can use a language. If the language policy is too focused on education perfection, then students can be influenced by whatever values are being represented. For example, if only the European standard is used as a way to grade students, then they will see the European standard as right. Language attitudes and ideology are feelings that one has about their own language or others' languages. If they see language as a problem, they may follow policies such as assimilation. If they see language as a right, they may follow policies such as education in one's mother tongue, as well as the wider communication. If they see language as a resource, they'll see it as a skill that people can acquire to climb socially or politically. I believe that K sees language as a resource, as we have a second language requirement that doesn't encourage involvement within the direct community. Language is seen as a skill instead of an ability that students have to engage with other cultures. What does it mean to learn language as a skill versus as a necessity? French students, at least, are not pushed to engage with the larger community. There's a loss of intimacy within their language. So how do we take all this context, all these ideas, and all this history, and form a more inclusive policy and program around French education at K? The first step we can take is diversifying the text that we use. From the beginning, students should be learning a global French and not just a white European experience. This goes back to language planning of what students deem as right or wrong. If they only learn about European French, they may begin to internalize that as the correct French. And even if they are exposed to other dialects or ways of speaking French, they will see it as inherently different from the standard and the French that they are used to. This diversifying will give well-rounded understanding of the Francophone world to students, which will help them encounter difference and engage with other cultures if they go on study abroad. A second strategy is to understand the placeness of Kalamazoo. When we think about Francophone cultures within Kalamazoo, we should engage with what is already here instead of a European standard. For example, Canadian French would be a good starting point, as Michigan is so close to the U.S., American, and Canadian border. Some other examples of North American French that students may engage with are Cajun French or Haitian French. Ultimately, students should be able to develop their own identity within French as an American or a Midwest French speaker. A last strategy would be conversations about social justice within French and France today. This will help students understand French cultures that they will be engaging with, as well as learning about difference in the world and understanding French through complex subjects. While history is good and important, students are learning French within the 21st century, and it is more important for them to know what type of world they're stepping into with this language instead of focusing on a standard that they may not ever engage with. Going abroad, students may face issues such as Islamophobia, police brutality, racism, and homophobia. And while it is uncomfortable to talk about these issues, talking about them gives students the courage and language to be able to experience conversations while abroad. So why does this matter? Because most students at Kalamazoo College who are French majors will go and study abroad in a Francophone country. And they will have real-time engagement with other cultures and other Francophone speakers. And while this is the best way to learn a language, it is also one of the hardest ways. And so we should prepare students with resources to be able to process the issues that they may come across while studying abroad. In my own study abroad experience, I went to France and I saw some examples of racism or other complex issues that I hadn't talked about in my French classes. And I found I couldn't talk about it because I did not have the vocabulary or the words to communicate what I was feeling and seeing in the world. I did my own personal research to see if other people are talking about this. And while I did find scholars who talked about issues, most of them were in English or did not have practical engagement opportunities with my peers. Race-blind republicanism shadowed over these moments and made it easy for others to write them off as non-existent. And it wasn't until the end of my trip that I noticed the word microaggressions translates in both English and French. And while this was a great word to start having these discussions, it was only after 9 months of living in France that I had discovered this. I had a strong foundation in French as my high school French teacher followed a model similar to one I am describing. But if I had had discussions about controversial topics, understanding of French culture, and my own identity within French as an American Francophone speaker, I feel like I would have had an easier time and I would have been able to get further in my discussions. So most of you do not speak French. And many of you are wondering, what does this have to do with me? Well, while this proposal was focused on French education at Kalamazoo College, there's a larger framework to understanding language education in general. When we break down language as focused on personal experience and the land that we are on, we are able to have a deeper connection with the words that we're speaking. When we break down standardization, we can understand language less as an ability that we use in a commercial sense and more as an identity that we take on personally. This is both the struggle and reward of language education. Many programs, such as the French program, struggle with finding enough students to take classes or graduate within the department. However, I believe that if we restructured the way that we thought about language more towards a personal approach that can change our lives instead of something we learn and master, people would be open to this experience. Finally, we could broaden the understanding of the world and the Francophone world as more than just France. We will then have more to celebrate and more to connect with, as there are so many rich Francophone cultures that often get ignored. Language is a tool of connection and a tool of community, and we should use it as a way to bring people together instead of hierarchize and separate them. Kalamazoo College as an institution has pushed students beyond the university, whether this is through their study abroad program or their study away program or their internships. Study abroad is often the first opportunity in their life for many students to leave the United States. It is also one of the most memorable experiences for many students after they graduate. So I encourage Kalamazoo College to take a step further and apply this trailblazing attitude towards language education. We can already start to see examples today. Through the Spanish department, we have had conversation and classes that encourage heritage speakers to engage with Spanish in a different way than a standardized education might. In the critical ethnic studies department, we see direct engagement with our community, and we do have examples of language engagement through programs such as El Concilio, which helps students mentor children, possibly in Spanish or in English. Now it is the French department's turn to step up and break the Eurocentric cycle of French education. While we are denying ourselves so much by closing off education to fit a standardized norm, because it is uncomfortable to talk about most of these issues, it is only through discomfort that we grow stronger. By broadening students' understanding of what it means to learn a language, we broaden their understanding of the world and themselves. Thank you.